Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Okay, well, thanks for doing this.
It is a pleasure to be here.
As we wrap up the first year of your grant, the end of the grant cycle, I know it's pretty amazing. And looking forward to your future, but also looking back on this year. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Great.
First one, what was the most rewarding part of receiving the Digital First Impact Grant this past year?
Most rewarding part of receiving it? Well, there's a couple. So one was that moment when I got it, and I knew that all of the dreams that I kind of had that had been first beginning to develop when I went to the Apple Boot Camp, I could now bring to fruition. So this idea that I had certain goals in mind, I had certain things that I envisioned for my classes, and being able to get the grant and know that the iPads and the support were coming into our journalistic environment, I really thought I could take our students to the next level. And then to see that happen, to see them really perform in ways that we had only before imagined. And when you have an idea of something and you think, well, if I have this tool and this technology and I train them in this way, they'll be able to do these amazing things. And when that really happens, it's almost like giving birth to something. Yeah. It's really just so exciting and so invigorating to see.
That's great. That's great. And I was lucky enough to see some of the projects, and they were just incredible.
We couldn't have done it without you.
Blew me away. So also, part of the Digital First Impact Grant and all impact grants we do is a research component. So going through IRB approval, collecting data, sometimes through surveys, focus groups, different things. Right. Talk a little bit about the focus of your research and some of the initial findings you're seeing.
Okay, so we did go through the whole IRB process, and we actually just submitted our paper for a hopeful publication. And the focus of it really was whether or not the iPads could make our students learn better, make them learn faster, make them be better journalists moving forward from just the single class environment that we were in. And the research that we saw was pretty impressive in terms of how quickly they grasped concepts, how far they were able to take those concepts within the class environment and really produce publishable quality work, which was our goal. That they would be able to use multimedia and social media in conjunction with all of the assignments that they did. And then that they were able to really take the concepts and move them past a class environment and be able to see them as they move forward in the world. One thing that we noticed that was interesting in the research was how their use of the iPad changed, especially in our first semester.
That's great.
We had them in a computer lab in the first semester, so they had a laptop right there. And the first two assignments, they used the iPad almost exclusively. But on the third assignment, when things got a little more difficult, they went back to the laptop, went back where they were comfortable. So we changed the environment in the second semester, and we took them out of a computer lab. They only had the iPads. And then we saw that they were using the iPads, and their growth was even greater in the second semester because they didn't really have that kind of crutch to rely on.
That's wonderful. So as we look ahead, and as the Office of Distance Ed and E-Learning moves forward, and we do more impact grants and more specifically Digital First Impact grants, what would you recommend to people that are applying, and then if they're lucky enough to be awarded the grant?
The most important thing, I think, is to really envision where you want to be at the end. I'm a big fan of comprehensive planning. I think that's because I was a government reporter for a long time. And to be able to see what your goal is. Where do you want to be at the end? And it's not just, hey, I want to have this technology and I want to put it in the class that I'm already doing. You need to really see where you want your students to be when they get finished with this new course that you're going to create. To re-envision the course in its entirety and how the iPad as a tool will benefit your students. I think what I'm experiencing when a lot of people get started with iPads is they're like, well, I'm just going to give them iPads and they're going to do the same work they did before. And that's not really useful to the students. The other thing that we took for granted, I think, in the first semester that we taught was their comfort level with technology, that they'd be just naturals, they'd grab hold of it and they would run, and they didn't. They were very timid when it came to approaching new technology. So to really plan and build into your whole course curriculum the training that is required for them to get comfortable in the beginning, and then as they start to reach more critical mass, more challenging concepts, to continue that training going forward. And when we did that more in our second semester, we saw them move forward much more rapidly and with steadier kind of progress because they weren't stepping back and going, oh, I'm really nervous. You were right there to say, I see you guys are nervous. I see this as a new challenge. Let's move forward together. Yep. And they just kept going. Now, that was a little hard for me because someone else was teaching a simpler section and their students were moving ahead, it seemed faster. They had their first assignment in before mine did. They had revisions before mine did. I was like, oh my God. But then once we were able to really get that strong foundation, my students just took off. And I think that's a huge part of it.
That's great. In a similar vein, you're flipping your classroom as part of the grant and part of your use of iTunes U and iBooks. And you're able to flip your classroom So students are watching instructional videos and doing more high-level thinking and conversation in classrooms and doing a lot of real hands-on work in class. Flipping the classroom is extremely popular at the moment. It is a lot of work, especially initially. What would be your recommendation to educators that are thinking about flipping their classroom?
That they have to think beyond the lectures, that the lectures really become less and less important as you really comprehend what the flipped classroom is going to mean to you. So the first one that I flipped, I had a pretty strong reliance on the lectures. I was still kind of lecturing the same quality and quantity of material that I would have done in a conventional class. And what I realized is students are not going to engage nearly as much in the lecture material as you may want them to. And even though they have the best of intentions, they really do want to be engaged in actual active learning. So, giving more thought and more preparation to the quantity and quality of the assignments that you're going to give them in the class environment as part of homework that relates to the lectures, and to recognize that you have to make it even balanced the same way that you had lecture in class and homework at home. The lectures and as homework and whatever material you give them really has to be similar to what they would have been facing under a more conventional class. And I'm seeing a lot of people saying, well, I can really load them up on material outside of class and then we can sort of goof around or, do a few things in class. But students, that's not the way that they want to be experiencing their learning. And so really understanding how they engage with your materials, whether it's something that you as a 18, 19, 20-year-old learner, would you be engaged in these materials? It's something that would make you feel compelled to want to learn. That's going to be a key component to moving forward in the flipped class. I did it last year with really great success. I saw really tremendous growth with my students, but I also saw the places where I needed to make some changes and where I needed to engage them in different ways. And so this semester for me is going to be really even more of fine-tuning, more of a remolding of how the flipped class will work and how I can get them even more engaged in it.
That's great. So you talked a little bit about going forward and into the future. So what are your goals for this coming academic year? We're in summer right now. It's a big planning time for educators all over. What are you thinking is on the horizon for you?
Well, I thank God we have summer because I have all kinds of stuff I want to do. So I'm writing another iBook. It's called Writing Like Rabbits, which is a book on how to be a magazine writer. I'm creating a new iTunes U course, which is around our enterprise reporting and multimedia course that we offer. It's called Enterprise Reporting in Diverse Communities, and I'm building that as something that I just not only our students will use, but I think will be really beneficial for people who want to be writers in the world. I have another iBook that's already getting started related to how journalists use social media and how we can incorporate social media in the journalism classroom in order to take them out of that. I'm beginning to go out into the world and help other people kind of envision how their iTunes U courses and their iBooks and all of those things can really start to enhance their educational opportunities. And then I'm really trying to engage even more in how I think our students want to learn materials. So I'm spending a lot of time talking to students and kind of exploring how the technology that we have provided them up to this point can be used to an even deeper and greater degree. I'm desperate for more technology. I know you and I talked about that before. I went out and my department was very supportive in providing a small number of iPads for more students, but I need to have more iPads in order to be able to engage them in the way that I really want to.
That's great. The final...
Stop one second.
Sure.
Okay. So, and then one other thing that we're also starting to work in is looking at more research in relation to the flipped classroom and iTunes use specifically and iPads in the flipped class. So I'm getting ready to do another IRB application to extend what we're doing in the class to really dig deeper into the flipped class and how it works. We're going to be starting with STEP, utilizing iPads and seeing how we can create a challenge-based learning project with iPads and that second year transformational experience. So, I think the iPad has become such an integral part of what I do that I need to even go even deeper for me as to how I can make it beneficial for my students.
That's great. One final question. I know and I admire you for being an advocate for students and for educators in both higher ed and K-12, in your personal life and professional life. So if you had one dream or hope for educators and education in general and for students out there in the United States, what would be your sort of hope or future goal for the system?
That's a big one. And I have a big answer. My hope for the system is that we really re-envision what we want education to be. And again, looking at the end result. What do we want students to look like when they have completed their K-12 and their higher ed experience? We are so stuck in kind of the rote mechanism of what education has been up to this point, related to hardcover, paper textbooks, related to students sitting in rows taking notes with papers and pencils, related to professors or teachers lecturing students for 48 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever it may be. And like it or not, we have a completely different type of learner in front of us now. And my son is 13 now, and his educational experience needs to be different than mine. He thinks differently than I do. He has greater opportunity, and he has greater distractions than I do. Mm-hmm. And we need to meet the learners where they are today. And I think too many of us, it's both an easy path and it's a less frightening path to say, look, this is how I learned, this is how I learned to teach, and so I'm going to keep going forward and teaching in this way. But the people that we're teaching don't have the same experiences that we had. They don't have the same expectations or kind of the same structure that we grew up in. And we need to meet them where they are. We need to understand who these learners are, what makes them engage as learners, want to be lifelong learners. And once we're able to break free of our own mores and meet them there, we will create the learners of the future, and we all need to engage in that.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You've been an amazing partner through this last year of the grant, and I know you'll be an amazing partner going forward. So.
Well, I can't thank Digital First enough. This has been an unbelievable opportunity. It's been a life-altering opportunity, and the support that you guys have provided is beyond any dream that I ever had. So I thank you, all of you, for everything that you've done.
Well, thanks, Nicole.